How do we do this? We clap, but we can't see each other. I'm brain farting how we've synced it.
Why don't we just sing Mary Had a Little Lamb and clap on this beat? Mary had a little lamb. No, you're way off. Holy shit.
Wait,
all right,
really?
Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb. Wow, there's such a lag. That's so funny. Okay, well,
you were making me question my timing anyways. I was like, damn, am I really that off?
Well, just make sure you cut all this crap out. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of 2 LPs in a Pod. I am Shawn. I am joined with my dear friend Andre on the show where we each pick an album based on a common theme and listen to those albums and just chat about them for about an hour. This time around, the theme is one album wonders. And unlike a one-hit wonder, I want to be super clear on this. A one-hit wonder is a band or artist that has many songs and one of them is a hit. A one album wonder is an artist that has one album full stop, and you're called a one album wonder if that one and only album that you made is really good. So before we jump into this, actually, I want to know, in your research, Andre, do you have any honorable mentions for this? Because there are a lot of good albums that fall into this category, and I'm wondering if you came across any that didn't quite. Yeah, I mean, we each only picked one album, so I'm curious if you had any that you wanted to shout out before we really get started.
That is a great question that I'm not prepared for. But it's funny because this concept of a one album wonder, that could happen for many reasons. But my immediate association with why this would happen is someone releases an album and they just get burnt out immediately. They're like, the music industry sucks. This making a living off this sucks. I'm done. And the first artist that comes to mind with that would be Neutral Milk Hotel, but they technically have 2 albums, and everyone knows them for In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. After that, he was just like, this is too much. I'm done. So that's like kind of the same sentiment. So kind of an honorable mention, but not really. And then also an honorable mention, but still not really, would be Q Lazarus. I don't know if you know who she is.
No.
She is an artist with a song. She just has one song called Goodbye Horses. And then the same thing happened. She was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is way too much like stress and pressure. I'm out. So not really in one album wonder, but like the same lines of like, she just went back to like being a bus driver or something. Like she couldn't deal with it anymore.
That's very interesting after one song. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, right. It's a pretty popular song.
For me, there were a few, and I don't think I had any examples of people who just quit the music industry. I had a few examples of people who died, which we'll touch on when we get to your thing.
Unfortunately,
one of the more tragic honorable mentions, and it almost was my choice for the show, was a band called The Exploding Hearts. They had an album called Guitar Romantic, I believe it was called. Hold on. Yeah, Guitar Romantic, released in 2003 as their one and only album, because tragically, the band was on tour or driving to a show or something, and one of the band members was driving and fell asleep at the wheel, and 3 out of the 4 members of the band were killed.
Jesus.
In a crash, yeah.
Fucked
so
up,
it's extremely tragic, and it's a kick-ass album, and it's hard to listen to something like that knowing the context of it. It has it gives it a definite a feeling that you wouldn't get otherwise from knowing the backstory there. So yeah, extremely sad, but quite a good album.
I guess it's life, man. You can't take things for granted.
Absolutely. Well, I think we can move right into my actual choice, which was, it's an artist I had never heard of. And I think I told you I've done a few different TikToks about one album wonders, because it's kind of a it's a topic I'm fascinated by, like why an artist would make just one album and it gets successful and they choose to, or for whatever reason cannot follow it up. And I was looking at some Reddit threads, and one comment about Willis Allen Ramsey caught my eye. So my choice for the show is Willis Allen Ramsey's self-titled album from 1972, which was released on Shelter Records. It was produced by Denny Cordell and Willis Allen Ramsey, and it was recorded in Nashville, Memphis, and maybe Austin, Texas. And it took about a year to make. Willis Allen Ramsey, he was only 20 and 21 years old during the making of this album, and he happened to just be, it was kind of luck or happenstance, and there's some really good interviews with him on YouTube about how he met the Allman Brothers and Leon Russell and auditioned for these different record labels and finally committed to make an album with Shelter Records. And that turned out to be his only album. And legend has it, if he is asked, why don't you make another album, he says, what's wrong with the first one?
I saw that. That's funny. That's a great response.
So this album produced many songs that would become standards that have been covered by many other artists. The most famous being Muskrat Candlelight, which the name got changed to Muskrat Love when it was covered by the group America, which Ramsey didn't want to do. He much preferred the title Muskrat Candlelight, but he was persuaded by how good the song was, and it was produced by George Martin. So he really liked America's version of the song, and he said, how can you say no to George Martin? So the song became famous as Muskrat Love when it was covered by America, and then later covered by The Captain and Tennille, which turned it into kind of a novelty joke song, which the lyrics do lend itself to. I'm not gonna deny that, and we'll get into some of the subject matter in a minute here. But right off the bat, Andre, I know that this kind of record is not exactly in my wheelhouse, and I'm guessing, I don't want to assume anything, but I think it might be kind of in your wheelhouse, but I want to know, like, what were your initial impressions listening to this?
So I think that we haven't gotten into this, like, because we used to talk about music all the time back at the Pound, and you know, we just went our separate ways in life and we didn't catch up as often. One thing that has changed about my musical taste, especially more in recent years, is I definitely enjoy singer-songwriter and folk music a lot more now. I had a friend, Dan Rockwork, who was actually in one of my previous videos that I interviewed. You might remember him. He's a folk musician, and he really turned me on to folk and singer-songwriter music. All that's to say, I did actually like this album. Like, I enjoy it. It's one thing that I only noticed very recently is that I didn't really dive that deeply into the lyrics before this recording, which is my fault. I just kind of had it on in the background, and it's very pleasant. Like, it's not mind-blowing. I watched the video that you shared, and they're saying it's a perfect record. I don't think it's a perfect record. It's nice while it's on in the background. It's very pleasant. I really don't have any complaints about it at all. It's just a nice kind of folksy Americana album. It's well performed. It's well recorded. I don't have any complaints about it.
Awesome. What were some of your favorite moments or tracks in particular, or did anything catch your ear? Because I know a few tracks on this I had on repeat more than others.
My problem with the way I consume music is that I'm so album centric that I have a hard time remembering individual tracks these days. I like the last song, Northeast Texas Woman. I like how the album ends.
Yes, agreed.
That would probably be my most memorable song. Muskrat Love is a good song. I really I just like the whole album. I just like putting it on, chilling out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know if I can highlight standout tracks. Sorry.
No, I like your sentiment there that it's a chill out album. It definitely is. It's mellow, but it's catchy. And in fact, when I was poking around trying to find albums for this topic, I first turned, the opening track is Ballad of Spider John, and it did hit me with this.
I like that song too.
Yeah, that's a good song, but one of the things about the songs on this album is that they can take until the chorus to kind of get under your skin in a way, at least to me. And Ballad of Spider John, the opener, is an example of this, because when I was listening to it the first time, the verses are very, very unassuming. They kind of sneak up on you. He's telling a story of a guy who was a drug runner that he hitchhiked and took a ride with.
Oh, yeah, I did that. He talked about it in a video.
Yeah, so it's just a narrative. It's a good folk narrative. We've all heard them before. But this one didn't catch me until it got to the chorus, and it struck me as his voice in this song sounded almost like Jim Croce, if you know him. He was a folk singer back in the 70s, I think. And his voice sounded a lot like that. My mom used to listen to a lot of Jim Croce, so I was like, okay, I can get with this. But then when the chorus kicks in on that first track, I was like, okay, I'm into this. This has a just really good sound. He's a great singer. It has a great voice. And then the Muskrat Candlelight is the second track, and you're like, wow, this is a really funny song. It's about two muskrats romancing each other. Like, what an odd thing. And come to find out, listening to interviews with him, he was very influenced by the cartoons of his time.
I saw that too. Yeah,
he was into Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, and he said that they were so brilliantly scored that it was a big influence on him. Combine that with the musical influences of living in Texas since the age of 10, and that's where we get a lot of the musical stylings on this album. And I want to make one more note before I forget. In an interview, separate from the video that I sent you, I watched the entire interview that audio came from. He said that one of his friends kind of took a dig at him and said, Willis, all of your songs are just about food and sex. And he said, don't forget animals.
It's a simple life.
Yeah, and it's true. It's very, like, Geraldine and the Honeybee is just, it's just a very thinly veiled metaphor for sex. And then you literally have a song called Watermelon Man, where he's just talking about how awesome watermelon is. But there's some really good ballads on here too. Angel Eyes is awesome. I really like Painted Lady. I wouldn't call that a ballad. But I'm going to agree emphatically with you that Northeast Texas Women is such an awesome song. And
it's a great song, yeah.
This is one where it's so fun. It's such a sing-along. When this is on in my car, I was belting out with it. I just love it. The lyrics are so good. They're so clever. And it has one of my favorite lines I've ever heard in a song. And I want to analyze this with you. So,
dang, I'm going to have to look up the lyrics right now.
No, I'll tell you. There's a line in the second or third verse where he says, "Them Dallas women standing up beat the others lying down." And I think that is such a brilliant freaking line, because what he's saying there, if you don't catch his drift, is that to feast your eyes on a Dallas woman is as pleasurable as sleeping with a lower,
that's funny.
a lower woman. So I think that's just such a clever, and again, there's a lot of sexual euphemism in this album that you don't get.
Well, he was a young guy, so this is a horny album, I guess.
right. But yeah, Northeast Texas Woman is a banger. It's an awesome closer for an album. And yeah, I was really obsessed with this album because we kind of planned this recording a while back, and I had time to really sink my teeth into this one, and I must have listened to it 20 or 30 times front to back.
Dang, really? Wow, I probably listened to it like 6 times.
But I probably listened to Northeast Texas Women like every day for a long time, at least a couple times a day. It's such a
Well, I'm glad you liked the album, man.
Song.
You went out on a limb to recommend something for the topic, and it turned out well for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know what I would feel based on the cover and the story of it, but I thought, okay, a singer-songwriter from Texas in the 70s. I'll give it a shot. And it ended up being...
I had never heard of this guy before. Yeah, before you recommended it either. But I'm glad I know him. I'm glad I can anticipate a second album now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. He is working on a new album.
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, so he may not be a one-album wonder for long.
Forever.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I do want to, I don't know how much... Before we move on, how much you know about him, but it's very interesting because you were saying it too. He put in all this effort to basically sell himself to the producers of the Allman Brothers or whatever. He was he was out there auditioning. You wouldn't be doing that if you weren't really into it, right? Why this long? And in the video, it didn't sound like he was. It sounded like he was pressured. He felt pressured to make another album, but it wasn't crippling anxiety or something. He didn't go that deep into it. He just didn't feel like releasing a second album right away. I don't know.
Yeah, he doesn't really specify exactly, but he does
maybe there's
say,
something that happened I don't know, in his life that he doesn't want to talk about.
Yeah, and in interviews I listened to, he said it's not because I'm a perfectionist. I'm not. He's I just want to make. He's I realize the first album, a lot of people think it's timeless, and I want to make timeless music, and that is something that you got to take your time on. And he said specifically, I want to make music that is fun and makes people get up out of their seats. And he's taking his time to do it right. So
I respect that, and yeah, most people can't even. I mean. Can't, but most people don't even release one album, so he's got nothing to prove.
Right, exactly. And that's why that's what a lot of people said on that video. It's a well loved, and like I said, a lot of these songs have become standards. If you look up Northeast Texas Women on Spotify, there's 4 different covers of it, and I'm sure there's many more out there.
Mm-hmm.
And all the songs you can find famous musicians covering them, because they have just all kind of stood the test of time, despite some of them having silly lyrics, but they're all heartfelt. You can do silly lyrics that come from the heart. Muskrat Love in particular reminded me of the band The Presidents of the United States of America. I bet you they were influenced by Willis Allen Ramsey, if I had to guess. Do you know them?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. So they were a Seattle alt band from the 90s, but they weren't grunge. They were kind of pop, a power pop rock band. But their lyrics are so similar to this, where they're just singing about food and animals and just silly stuff. But their songs rock and are catchy. And like I said, I bet you they know this album, if I had to guess, because it's a very similar vibe. So, yeah, and this one, it also only clocks in at about 40 minutes. So most of the songs are pretty short.
It's a compact album.
2.5
It's endearing.
Minutes. Yeah,
doesn't take itself too seriously. I think that's why it lends itself nice to being a chill album.
Yeah, and especially at the end, you can tell they're kind of goofing around. He's doing this Kermit the Frog voice when he's counting the song off, and then at the end, that song's pretty long because they come back in, they let it fade out, and then they come back in, and then at the end, the song just kind of falls apart, and he goes, "Well, that's it." And that's the end of the album. And I'm like, what a great moment. What a great closer.
Dude, it's funny that you like this album so much because you don't like Bob Dylan, and it definitely reminds me of Bob Dylan. Even moments like that, there are some on Bob Dylan albums.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, my thing with Bob Dylan is his singing voice. It's very different. It's pretty simple. No knock against him for his poetic lyricism or his impact or whatever. I just don't like his voice to listen to it. So
fair enough.
But yeah, he was a big influence on Willis Allen Ramsey, and a lot of those singer-songwriters from back then were. So yeah. So if you can't, I mean, I guess we could wrap this section up. I said everything I wanted, unless you want to add anything to this one.
Not much, man. If anyone's listening, they're into singer-songwriter music, folk music, Americana music, check out Willis Allen Ramsey. Get excited for a second album.
Yeah, this one gets a This is like a 9 out of 10 album for me. Like
Oh, wow.
I agree with your assessment that it's not quite a perfect record, but it's damn close. Like there's no skips. I listen to it front to back quite quite frequently, and I recommend it to anybody who can, who likes a good song. I will say one knock, and I forgot to mention this earlier. It's not a knock, but you can kind of tell that it was recorded kind of all over the place and on a long.
Oh, really? I didn't notice.
timeline.
I didn't. I don't think I analyzed this as hard as you.
Oh, okay. I guess maybe for me, listening to it so many times, I did notice his voice sounds kind of different in this one. And then when you find out it was recorded in 3, possibly more different recording studios, I'm not going to say, you can tell. It's just kind of slapped together. It's not that, but it's like,
it's inconsistent.
I don't even want to say that because that sounds negative. It just sounds like almost like a greatest hits album, but it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
So, but for now, it is his greatest hits album because it's his only album. So there you go. But yeah, highly recommend Willis Allen Ramsey from 1972. Check it out. So with that, let's move on to your choice, Andre. And I'm looking forward to hearing the story behind this one. So,
all right. So we did mention in the beginning that there's many ways to become a one album wonder, and unfortunately, one of them is when an artist passes away. So that is what happened with Capital STEEZ. The album I selected for our podcast is titled American Corruption. It is technically a mixtape, but it is his only like full length, if you want to call it that. Released in 2012. It is self-released, but there is also some background. Capital STEEZ and Joey Badass and some other artists are a part of a Brooklyn rap collective called Pro Era, and I think it is an independent record label. So whether it was released by Pro Era or just released by Capital STEEZ, I guess you need to fact check that. There is also, he released it in April of that year. They re-released it the same year with like bonus tracks, basically like a little LP called American Corruption Reloaded. And then in December of that year, he unfortunately took his own life. So this is the only album we have for now. This also was an album, you mentioned that Willis Allen Ramsey you hadn't listened to. I knew Capital STEEZ. So this album was on my list for a while. And it came to me when you suggested the topic. I was like, okay, let's listen to this. And before we go more into the story, just to give my thoughts on the album, I don't enjoy it that much. It's kind of fine. It is very, I don't like using this word, but it's pretty derivative. Like it sounds a lot like a lot of other East Coast hip hop. I mean, he even uses like the all caps Mad Villain sample for the first track, which is that song is cool, but it's almost like he's cheating.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's like 19 when he released this. It's his first album. It's not even an album. Technically, he was calling it a mixtape. So, the potential for him to like grow as an artist was definitely there. Again, he was like a longtime friend of Joey Badass, and I don't know about you, but I love Joey. He's put together a great career for himself already. There's definitely the potential for him to, grow into his artistry and release something much better along the line. But this is the album that we have. What are your thoughts on the album after listening to it, just sonically?
It was kind of what you said, very kind of in the vein of East Coast rap from that time, and with a lot of just the normal references. It's almost like there's a toolbox of references and lines that have to get thrown into a East Coast rap album. You're gonna catch a lot of there's the one song, the second track is a interpolation of Dead Presidents.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, Doom produced a couple of these, and there are
I don't
a lot
know if he
of
produced them or he just sampled the music.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we're going off a SoundCloud thing, and it was credited. He was credited with production, so I don't know if that means they just used
I don't know if he like
sample,
literally touched it,
like how that works. But yeah, that makes sense. That's a good call out. But yeah, I liked it. I did. One of the things that this is my fault, but one of the things is that it's only available on SoundCloud, and I didn't feel like putting SoundCloud on my phone, so I had to listen to it in a browser. and it was hard to navigate and like pick certain tracks that I liked. I had to just kind of listen to the whole album front to back and like not.
Hey man, that's the way to do it.
With it. No, I know that's the best way to do it, but it made it hard to kind of pick favorite moments or pick favorite tracks. I did like Free the Robots. Mm-hmm. And some of the other songs toward the end of the album. I will say I really didn't like it when he tried to sing. I don't know if that was kind of a joke, like a self-deprecating, because like I think about like really old albums like Slick Rick or like when the Wu-Tang guys like sing, it's kind of a joke, and I don't know if this was like that on songs where he was singing. Do you
Maybe. Know? It didn't catch my ear that like garishly, to be honest. I mean, I don't know much about this guy. I don't think he would do it as a joke. I mean, he was 19, right? So, like, he's still trying to find his voice, literally. Maybe if it sounded bad, he was trying his best. Didn't want to rely too much on autotune or something. I don't know.
Fair enough. And you've heard my music, so I'm no one to talk about singing talent.
Yeah, we can all, we can all lay down critiques. We can all give our honest opinion on things.
He definitely raps better than he sings. I can say that with confidence.
He's a very good rapper. He has good flow. It's funny, he sounds a lot like Joey Badass. Like, I couldn't shake that. The comparisons are gonna keep coming.
Yeah. I'm not that deep of a fan of any of these guys. Like, I've heard Joey Badass. I've heard of him. I've heard some of his music. I listened to the track that you sent me. But this is definitely an area of rap and hip hop that I'm not super familiar with. That East Coast like 2000s 2010s era, beyond like Doom and a couple others, but that's something kind of different, right?
I will highly recommend Joey Badass's album from the same year. It's titled 1999. It came out in 2012. That's a great album. Like, that's an awesome album. There are like some, I think, MF Doom samples on that too. So like, they're like friends. They kind of do a similar thing. I think Joey's album is, I hate to say better, but it's definitely more iconic. Like, many more people have listened to that and laud that album than AmeriKKKan Korruption. The single that I listed is from Joey Badass's album from last year. It's kind of like a sequel. The album's titled 2000. And the song is Survivor's Guild. So obviously he talks a lot about capital STEEZ and, the effect of his longtime friend taking his own life. This is a really heavy track. He does also mention, to give more background, there is potentially an album that will be released under the name Capital STEEZ called King Capital. So Capital STEEZ may also not be a one album wonder forever. I don't know the details, but apparently Joey Badass is working on that album. Like, he must just have either like half finished songs or like a bunch of verses or something that he's trying to put together. And there's no firm release date. He obviously wants to take his time with it. There was also some drama with the family, like whether they want to release an album or something. But yeah, there's just a lot of background. Even if I didn't like listening to the album that much, I am definitely glad I listened to it, because it is such an important piece of like East Coast hip hop history in my mind.
Yeah, I'm actually aligned with that. Like, I didn't dislike it at all. I quite enjoyed it, but it wasn't a thing that like stuck to my ribs in a way that's like, wow, not like, like Willis, Allen, Ramsey, I'm going to continue to listen to. But with this album, it's not going to stay in rotation. I mean, the least of which, why? Because it's on SoundCloud and I don't use SoundCloud. If it ever makes it to Spotify, or if the second album does, I might, playlist some of those songs. But I'm with you. This I enjoyed it, and I thought the beats were good, and I don't know if we've discussed this before, but I like rap and hip hop that doesn't have like slamming bass. Like, I like these productions with more of a light touch.
Yeah, it's more mellow. It's not jazz rap, but kind of boom bap.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, it was an interesting listen, and I think I kind of took more from this young man, his tragic story, than I did the actual album, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. I feel like with this particular episode, of course we're recommending music, but like I was more so invested in like the story of like why these two artists arrived at the one album wonder status. This is a great topic that you recommended.
Oh, thank you. I do want to say too, like I think even if Joey Badass releases this second album, I think that, you know, the one album wonder thing, and I know I'm just getting like nerdy pedantic here, but you know, the Sex Pistols technically have a handful of albums.
I would call them a one album wonder. Yeah. I didn't even think
well, that's
that.
what I'm getting at. Like there's a few like compilations and there's a movie soundtrack, I think. But to me, they only have one album. You know what I mean? So even if a posthumous album comes out, I don't know. I don't know if I would change.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know
true.
if that would change anything in my mind.
Dude, wow! So, like now I'm like getting sidetracked because I know the Sex Pistols. Like, surely whatever record label they were on wanted to squeeze them for as much money as possible, so there might be other albums, but like. Never mind the Bollocks is their only studio album, right? Like, they didn't release anything else?
Yeah, I remember I had a CD called The Great Rock and Roll Swindle, which was, I believe, the soundtrack to a movie that they made. And it had
I see.
It had a lot of the same songs as the album, but different versions of them. But yeah, it's some people might say, oh, they have that. But it's like, no, that's not really an album. So.
There's a bit of a, I guess, I can't think of the right word. There's some leeway with what we consider a one album wonder, I guess. There's some like feel and spirit to it.
Definitely. And this is our show, so we can call them whatever we want.
Yeah, fuck you guys. This is our show.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about it, man. Do you want to tease? So we're going to nominate a topic for next time. The idea was that I would pick one, you'd pick one, and we would kind of just decide on the spot which one we want to go with.
Yeah. Do you want to give your proposed topic first?
Sure. My proposed topic would be a one-man or one-woman project, because I have a few in mind that are pretty good.
Dude, so neither of the albums we recommended today would count. Like you're talking hardcore. They did everything.
Exactly. Like all instrumentation, all writing, not necessarily all production, but I'm talking written and performed by one person.
Sidetrack also, but you remember our good friend Alex? Like he took music business or something in college, and he didn't know Tame Impala at the time, but in one of the classes they were talking about Tame Impala, and people love to fucking laud that guy, and someone was like, of his at the time most recent album Currents, someone was like, oh, he did everything on that album. He recorded it all, he wrote it all, like he did it all by himself. And then one guy was like, no, someone mastered it. So, like it's just so, like such a music nerd thing to say, like actually someone mastered the album, he didn't do it all by himself.
That's so funny.
But okay,
so what was your topic nomination?
You know, we've been recommending each other some albums that like we haven't listened to. We're like trying to like learn more about music history and stuff. I want to give like a softball for us, like just like a lob, an easy dunk. I want to do 2 dance pop albums.
Oh, yeah. That would be, well, the hardest part for me would be picking one, because that's one of my favorite genres.
That would be just like where we're really actually recommending 2 albums to each other. Because I feel like, especially with this one, we both picked albums we hadn't even heard yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry. Out of those 2, which one do you want to do? And we'll do the other one after that. Does that work?
Oh, that works. You know what? Let me think of the 2. If we're going to do both, no matter what, let me just... I'll need some time to pick like 2 recommendations, and we can decide what we do from there. Does that sound good? A little bit of a tease.
Let's leave the audience hanging. Yet. So next show will either be a one-person project, or it'll be dance pop album recommendations.
Yes.
So I love it. I love them both, and I'm excited to do both of them.
All right, nice. I think we've done all we need to do, right? Any closing words? Any parting words?
Nope. Make sure to follow Disc Junkie on Spotify and YouTube, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, man. Yeah. Take care. Thanks for listening, guys. have a good rest of your day.